So just out of curiosity, those of you who are 40-ish, 45-ish, figured out what it is yet? You've got that. I look at your eyes and you're kind of going, what's he oh, she's probably very, very close. Yeah. Okay. I owe you something. I don't know what it is, but, Wow. Thank you. That helped. You're going to have to tell them all later on. So I need to let you know, I grew up in one of the more conservative branches of the Lutheran Church, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, as a child and as a young adult. I went to a Lutheran parochial school, grades 1 through 8. I graduated with one of the largest classes at the time, which totaled 13. Okay. I was not involved in Sunday school. I have no recollection of being in a Sunday school Christmas program. I don't believe I ever went to VBS, and did not know that there was another group of youth who were going through confirmation classes on the weekends until I was confirmed. The group, when gathered together, more than tripled my class of 13. We worshiped in the gym of the school for years. And I thought the only people who worshiped in fancy churches were Roman Catholics. That's because I would spend the night with my best friend, and we would go to Mass on Sunday morning. But when I was in the 5th grade, our favorite field that we loved to play in had a hole dug in it. The audacity of the adults. And on that hole, they built this huge church and dared to attach it to the school. We missed our field. The one thing I came away with after this impressive sanctuary was built was that the altar was a special area. You did not go near it nor play around it in this big new church. No one ever fully explained it to us. But this was a no mess around zone. The Hebrew word we translate as altar is to be understood as the place of sacrificing. There is something, though, much deeper connected to that Hebrew word. The altar is where God and humanity clasp hands. It is the axis of heaven and earth. Every altar is a mini mountain where sinners stand trembling before it. The Lord steps down, and there is a rendezvous of mercy. It was on the altar that folks start over their relationship with God and thus with one another. Sadly, humanity always seemed to let go of God's hands soon after they touched it. And each altar thus could only provide temporary relief, not lasting connection. There is something about us that refuses to believe that we need to hold on to God's hands. We are all too often like toddlers pulling away from the one who loves them and wishes to protect them. We often fail to understand what to hold on to and what to let go of. Well, that which has true richness and meaning for our lives. For example, I am not opposed to wealth, but it dares not be the primary focus in our life as followers of Jesus Christ. Our focus is critical for our walk as disciples of Jesus Christ. Our focus is critical if we are to know life truly. We must understand that life looks different when you focus on different things. As Lent quickly approaches, it reminds us to focus back upon God when we have all tended to look at the shiny trinkets of life. We are called to put our faith in the hands of a faithful God. But all too often, we trust things that we really shouldn't trust. I love that old story that may or may not have anything to do with this sermon, but I'm going to tell it anyhow. These two old friends happened to bump into each other one day after many years of being separated. They had lost contact with one another, and one attended college and now was a very successful person. The other did not attend college and, well, quite frankly, never had much ambition. The successful one said to his old friend, "Well, how has everything been going with you?" half expecting to hear the poverty story. "Well, one day I opened the Bible at random and dropped my finger on a page and it landed on precious stone. So I invested in a lithium mine. And boy, did that mine make me wealthy. Then one day I dropped my finger on another word and it was gold. So I invested in gold and those mines have really produced. Now I am rich as Steve Bezos." The successful friend was so impressed that he rushed to his hotel room, grabbed the Gideon Bible, flipped it open, and dropped his finger on a page. He opened his eyes, and his finger rested on the words, chapter 11. Pays attention on where you put your trust, doesn't it? This sermon is not about wealth. This sermon is about change. People like a predictable world and almost abhor those times between past and future. The time that is uncertain, the grayness of life. We are, like it or not, living in a time between what was and what will be. It is not comfortable times. But it is our reality. And I would remind you that change is a 6-letter word and not a 4-letter word. There is not one of us who can stop change. Usually it is gradual and we don't notice the change until we see a picture of ourselves. I took one of my grandsons to an event honoring one of my old high school coaches. We saw my picture in one of the trophy cases. He said, "Hey, you were pretty good looking once." Well, thanks a lot, Bennett. We continue to live with the illusion that things haven't changed. But a photograph of us reveals we have been living a life of an illusion. Living changes each of us, and life changes for each of us. Right now, the rapidity of change causes many of us to be filled with confusion and anxiety. Our frustrations and anxieties can grow until it can turn to an anger that strikes out in ways that releases our energy upon others and even upon ourselves. In these times, we usually don't mean to get people mad or upset, but we act in ways that anger people just the same. We unwittingly cause it by our actions or inactions, which usually means we create more change. We point fingers at our enemies, failing to remember we are ourselves our worst enemies. We charge ahead to get back to our normal, only to stampede over others. And this has often led to the slaughter of many a lamb in our congregations. We release our anger, our anxiety, but the cost in spiritual existence is costly. Now, do we surrender to despair or point fingers at the absurdity of our actions or behaviors? No. We go to the mirror and remember whose we are. We are God's. We remember our names. And the water poured over us, and the name poured upon us, and in us, and through us. And our God, who continues to reach out and hold on to us through the outstretched arms and hands of Jesus Christ. 3 booths, or temporary dwelling places, want to be built for the 3 great prophets standing before this small group of disciples who are completely out of their elements in the Gospel of Mark. Peter wants to build shrines to the moment and to keep the status quo, but the world is about to change for him. In the meantime, he will need to live between the mountaintop and Golgotha. Peter would have been satisfied to build these 3 straw shrines. He could not understand that 3 crosses would go up, with one of them being filled with a changeless promise. He had no way of knowing that there was something everlasting holding on to each of us, that once and forever, reminding us that on a hill far away stood an old rugged cross, the emblem of suffering and shame. And I love that old cross where the dearest and best for a world of lost sinners was slain. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross till my trophies at last I lay down, and I will cling to the old rugged cross and exchange it someday for a crown. So some days I come into this sanctuary and I walk around it. I walk up here, and I don't know your names or your faces for the most part, but I pray for all of you sitting up there. I walk up and down this aisle and all around, and I pray, and I ask God to be with you. I do that sometimes for 30 minutes, up and down, praying. I also get my steps in, by the way. I ask God and the Holy Spirit to land on you, to heal you, to guide you, to protect you. And sometimes I walk up here to this altar. But ever since I first came here to have communion, I went, there's something different about this altar. It feels strange to me. What has happened to this altar? There's no evil there, nothing evil. I don't want you to think that. That's not what I'm saying. I just noticed there was something a little different about it. And then the other day, I walked up, and I saw that it's been removed from the wall. And then it went from what is known sometimes as an east wall altar and pushed out to make it into a table. So in the old days, when you presided over communion, this is how the pastor would stand. But in these days, the pastor joins with you in the congregation and in the meal, surrounded by the people of God, joined together at the supper table, where God has prepared a meal for us, reminded us how much God loves us, and invites us to stand around this sacred meal. We in some ways have gone from the sacrament of the altar to Luther's favorite understanding of the Lord's Supper. Spiritual nourishment. I can't even imagine what it must have been like and the conversations that went on in this congregation when they started talking about moving this thing. I don't even want to pretend what was happening in those days. But here it is. And the change did not kill you. It just changed the way you looked at things. Now, I would remind you, too, that there is a generation that literally has never known it any other way. Brothers and sisters, Peter wanted 3 booths. God wanted a cross. A cross to become a new symbol of an altar for us. A cross that could go with us anywhere we would go. A cross that would be above an altar, but never staying there. A cross grounded into the reality of our existence, on the ground on which we walk, as a sign of God constantly and continually reaching God's hands out to us and saying, hold my hand, I love you. Hold my hand, I want to protect you. Hold my hand, I want to guide you. Trust me. I will not let change destroy you, for I cannot be changed. My love, my life, my existence is eternal. There is no need to be afraid of change. There is no need to be afraid of the time between one moment and another moment. Because in this very center, in the grayness and the ambiguity, there remains the faithfulness of God and the cross of Jesus Christ that says, I am with you. Hey, is not God with you? Is it not time to reach out your hands and say, I don't have the skill for this, but I trust you. Help us, guide us, lead us.